Welcome, everyone. My name is James Mancini. I'm a principal solution architect and one of the founders of Netreo. Today, we're going to be talking about ways to better manage your IT remotely and how to really turn this crisis into an opportunity for digital transformation. If you think of any questions during the presentation, please make sure to enter them into the questions section of the GoToWebinar interface, and we'll be sure to answer them for you. So first, let me briefly introduce you to Duleep Wikramanayake. I apologize, I probably mangled your name there, Duleep. He's the CIO of SimonMed, and he's been a Netreo customer since 2014. Duleep volunteered to share with you all today how he's been able to turn the chaos of the current situation to an opportunity to accelerate digital transformation within his organization. So I'll let him introduce himself and give you some more details now. Duleep?
Hey, thanks, James. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. These are tough times, but I think it's also exciting times in the sense of what we're going to do. So let me share a little bit about me. I grew up in Sri Lanka. The only thing I knew about computers was HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey. And that interest, as I came to the US, took me into IT as a hobby. It is my passion now. I've been an IT executive for about 15 plus years and about 17 years in the radiology IT space. So it's one place where I kind of specialize in how imaging is done. So who is SimonMed? So we are one of the second largest imaging groups in the country. For all intents and purposes, we are a testing facility, right? We have 127 sites across 8 states. We're actually growing in leaps and bounds. We do over 2,000 exams a year. And we have 188 radiologists to 200 radiologists on a given day, depending on where things are. And we are currently growing through acquisitions and new installs, and that hasn't stopped even with these chaotic times. We have 2,000 plus employees, right? And we are about to go, have another 6 or 10 sites go live in the next 6 weeks. So I want to tell you, one of the reasons we put this map out here is because we acquire about 650 gigs of data a day and move 1.2 terabytes of data on our network every day. So when you look at our map and you see the distribution of our sites, including where we are in the Dominican Republic, and if you see the stars out there, that's where all our radiologists sit. And we have to get these images to our radiologists so that they can actually interpret these studies, right, and finally give a diagnostic report. This is incredibly important to us since it is one of the radiologists is the most highest paid employee, and he's the one who brings our revenue side. So if he can't get to the study, he can read it. If he can't read it, we don't get paid. So it's pretty important how all this is going to work, right? And it was kind of important that the entire audience understands what we are doing in terms of digital transformation. So given what we had on March, we have an amazing CEO. He has an incredibly brilliant mind. March 12th, he came to me and he said, hey, we need to expand our VDI base for our Dominican Republic call center. We had about 20 people. Again, they were not on VDI. They were on a kind of a VPN using call center applications plus using soft phones. So between March 12th and about March 17th, and about 2 days later, I get a call back from him and says, Duleep, I think the situation is going to be really bad. We need to get in front of this. Can we expand it across across our entire enterprise? So when you looked at this, I said, yep, absolutely, we can do that. And this is where having good partners count, right? If you have bad partners, you can't do this. I have amazing partners, vendor partners that actually was able to kind of act on my request and deliver on it, right? So things like, hey, I needed the right hardware to get in place. So within 5 days, we had actually got a remote 500 users out back at home using almost any computer and accessing every single application that they had accessible to them in an office. So that was amazing. We had to create 18 pools for the different kind of departments that we had across 127 sites, right? So that was a big deal, and for the first time we created a paradigm shift in a IT organization, where finally IT is, instead of being, I don't know what the hell they're doing, to wow, these guys are amazing. So when you look at what we did, right, again, and I want to talk a little bit more about this, is the fact that even in the Dominican Republic, we got requests saying, hey, by the way, we don't have the infrastructure, but we need to have remote users working from home. And we have clinical operations, some of the clinical administrative operations that is happening in India. They had the same issue that we have today, that people had to work from home, and they didn't have a mechanism to have these users from home. We actually enabled all of them to work from home today, and they routinely access these applications very securely from anywhere they are at on their own computers, and access our applications to help us kind of keep the lights on right now. So that's kind of a amazing transformation that we did, and we are very kind of proud of how we got there, and we had an amazing team and partners, which we were able to do this in 5 days. The other thing that we are doing is we are actually implementing a new radiology information systems. This is huge. This is our bread and butter. This is where an entire patient life cycle happens during any kind of examination that we do. So we have 2,000 plus users and about 1,300 users that need to get trained, right? Or about 1,500 users, I should say. To date, we have trained 1,300 users remotely using technology, right? So anybody everywhere, they didn't have to travel anywhere to be in a class. We created classrooms, digital classroom, remote classrooms, so that we could train these people in all aspects of the application. And we'll be doing refresher courses. Not only did we do that, we actually recorded every single one of them. So if you have to play back and look at how to improve that, we can do that today, right? So these are the kind of transformation that is going on since March 12th, right? It's only been 7 weeks, and we managed to do all this. In addition to that, we had to send some of our technicians who actually do the study home, because whether they were had immune deficiencies or whatever it is, that they couldn't be down there. So one of the things we did was we had some junior technicians. We cross-trained these technicians to do these exams remotely, with a senior technician remoting in to the modality itself and doing stuff. So this is something we have never done before, but we are doing it very successfully, and now we are able to keep our lights on. Most of the industry in our space is down to 10 to 20% of the volume that they usually do. We are down to about 40%, and sometimes maybe we're up to 50%. So we are actually doing a lot better in terms of our competition and all other healthcare organizations, and we are doing this all along, right? So we are not stopping. We are constantly moving. My team is up from like 5 o'clock in the morning, and because we have to cover a shift from the East Coast, so we are up 18 hours a day. Our team is working 18 hours a day today, with the same, actually with a lesser team than we had before. We are moving ahead with our acquisitions. We are about to do 6 or 10 more new acquisitions in Chicago, and it's all ready to go, right? We continue to automate and remotely push Windows 10 upgrade. So when we started this project in January, we were a little behind, and we had to get these machines upgraded. However, in March, it came to a screeching halt with everybody moving around, and so we were kind of stuck, and the needle stopped. However, what we did was we staggered our teams and got a little bit more efficient, and got that needle moving, right? So unfortunately, this is something really hard to do when there's a situation like that. There has to be a reduction of human capital. And it was very minimal, because I want to make sure that only people that I was willing to get let go. And I had this big conversation with our CEO, and I said, listen, you want to do all these things. This is the right time. to keep the right folks and start moving the needle, because you don't want to let these people go, because they have been highly trained in our operations, and it is going to be a detriment to us. So he agreed with me. We got rid of the stuff that were really mostly performance related. So we didn't miss much, but actually we improved services in some areas where the people who left were actually not doing a good job, right? So the current staff now is completely assigned to digital transformation, right? So we have not much in operations to support, because we are supporting only 40% of our normal operations, right? So that's huge. So we are taking this time right now and moving forward with a lot of application transformations that we are doing. So for instance, we are putting a new risk, we are putting a new public-facing portal that our patients and our referring doctors, because we have two customer bases. Our main customer base is our referring doctors. Our secondary customer is actually the patient, but we still need them to give access to their own studies and stuff like that. So now we are able to do that going forward. Somewhere in late May, early June, we will roll this out while this crisis is still going on, right? So how do we do this? One of the things we did was I had a team meeting and said, hey guys, aren't we happy that we all are employed to work? We are blessed in the sense that 22 million people have no jobs today, and here we still have our jobs and we can work. So how do we get this done without overtime, right? So what we did was we staggered our staff into different shifts, and we started doing project work after hours, right? So we reduced costs and actually still were able to still keep that needle moving, even at a pace faster than we were doing before. So we are really in a good spot and doing transformation while we're doing that. James, next slide. So how do you leverage tools to maintain visibility? And this is where Netreo comes into play. One of the first things that I did 15 months ago when I took this job was to figure out, hey, what is my environment? How healthy is it? And this is where I go to Netreo and go, please guys, I need your application installed ASAP, implemented. And one of the things they've done is they worked very closely with us, got this up and running very quickly. Within 3 months, we have over like 800 right now devices and services that are being monitored as we speak, and there's going to be more because we haven't got everything in place. But one of the things that we first saw was, and I didn't get the buy-in from my team, because we got 35,000 critical alerts. And they said, Duleep, this is not working. It's a lot of noise. And when he looked at it, the 35,000, they were actually critical alerts. The place was a mess, right? And so this was our roadmap to say, okay, here's what we got. Let's get our arms around this and fix this. So in the last 15 months, we've actually normalized the place by watching this thing absolutely go green over time, right? It was all red and alerting like crazy. Right now we get about 2,400 critical alerts a quarter. That's a far cry from 35,000 the first time we put it on, right? So one of the things that this brings is we are very heavy in utilizing bandwidth, and our bandwidth was costing us a lot of money, right? And we needed to figure out how do you make this efficient. So we had to monitor all these things, and in monitoring this, we knew what sites needed to upgrade, what sites we could scale down, and we could look at the latency and hold our carriers accountable, because we wouldn't get our normal performance without having the right latency, right? The accepted levels of latency. And then we were able to put SD-WAN, and that project is going on, and we are about 90% completed on it, and we are continuing to do that every day, lighting up site after site for SD-WAN. And one of the things that has brought to light is that we went from a spend of $5.4 million to under $2 million for our voice and data. So again, leveraging the right tools, it brings in a lot of efficiency. Takes the chaos and brings a lot of calm to the area where now you can concentrate on doing your digital transformation that you got hired to do anyway. So on that note, let me hand this back over to James, and let him talk about what Netreo does really well.
Sure, thanks, Duleep. So I'm just going to go through a couple of what we call leading practices, things that we've seen in the field and that our customers have done to try to deal with the current crisis and create opportunities as well as get a better handle on things when they're trying to manage remotely. So some of the operational challenges that the current crisis has created are driving a new set of best practices. And many of these things are things that can be implemented very easily. They don't require a lot of effort to deploy. So one of the first things we say is to limit the notifications to critical items only. And this isn't new advice, we're always saying this, but it's especially important in a crisis situation like this, as the increased level of activity and the potential difficulty of mobilizing resources means that too many alerts are actually worse than just noise. They can actually cause major delays in fixing problems. So we still have to maintain visibility into the performance and availability for the key applications now more than ever. And we especially need the ability to monitor them from multiple locations outside our immediate environment. Now that our users aren't coming from our corporate network, but they're coming from home, we need to be able to validate that those resources that they need are accessible from outside our environment. We also want to make sure we're considering how to handle and route those notifications and alerts and exactly when and what you need to be looking at. And we also recommend creating a dedicated remote work dashboard so you can keep a close eye on how things are going in your environment. So let's dig into each of these deeper, and I'm going to show you how to quickly implement them in your environment with our platform. So the first thing we need to do is make sure you're only getting the alerts you need. And the best way to do that is to make sure you're reserving active alerts for actionable items only. So if you're not going to react to a notification as soon as you get it, you shouldn't be alerting on it. For example, if you're getting alerts when hard drives reach 90% utilization and then just ignoring them because it's not urgent, two things are going to happen. First, sooner or later, you're going to get a server failure because you forgot to circle back on that alert before the drive filled up. And second, you're conditioning yourself and your teams to ignore those alerts. And somebody is going to inevitably ignore the wrong one someday, and now you've got a major problem on your hands. So instead, what you should be doing is to configure reports. So every morning, I get a list of the servers with the lowest free drive space, and I know if I go deal with the top few entries on that list, I get to sleep through the night. I never have to get that alarm. The same concept can apply to most of the different kinds of performance thresholds that we're monitoring that aren't business impacting. A key point for success here, though, is that all of these have to be scheduled and automated so nothing gets missed. And we give you a very easy way to accomplish that, which I'll demonstrate shortly. Let's look at what is really an actionable alert. So if I get a high CPU utilization alarm, is that actionable? Probably not. I mean, I'm not going to drop everything and go do something about a high CPU alarm. Now, maybe if the CPU's been stuck there for a while, I might, but most of the time I won't. So our platform allows you to set a delay for those types of alerts. So for example, it won't generate an alarm until it's been over 95% for some length of time. If your SQL Server pegs the CPU, that's probably normal, and I don't want that alarm. But if it's been pegged for 30 minutes, I probably have a job I need to go kill. What about a switch port going down? Is that actionable? Well, if it's plugged into something important, generally yes. This is a good candidate for an immediate alarm. But what if it's part of a port channel, or if it's just one server in a big cluster? That might warrant a different priority or a different method of notification that doesn't require a drop everything and fix this response. So we need to consider that when we're setting those alarms up. What about if an internal application goes down? Well, that's generally a big yes, but you might want to try automating a response first. So for example, you can have your Netreo try to restart the service or reboot the server to restore service faster. Now let me quickly show you how to automate a report so you can keep informed without getting bombarded by alerts. So in the platform, I'm going to go in and create a report for server CPU. So I'm going to go in here and load my top talkers up. And it's going to walk me through the process of selecting the different kinds of devices that I want to run this report on. So in this case, I'm going to pick my Windows servers, and then it's going to prompt me for what exact statistic I want to measure, how I want that report returned. And in this case, I'm just going to create an overall average system report. So it's going to create a prototype of that report for me, and then I can go in and change exactly how that report is displayed. So maybe I want to look at the last 7 days, and I want to get that in the format of a stacked graph. Whatever the options are that you want for the display, you can build those into the report. And when I've got it looking the way I want it to, all I have to do to schedule that report is click the schedule button. And I can either add this as a new page to an existing report that I've already created, or if I want to create a new report, I can just click that, give it a name. I'm going to call this one server CPU and create that report. Now, to schedule that report, all I have to do is go to the list of reports and click schedules. And I'm going to create a new schedule for this report. You can have multiple schedules that affect a single report. So if you want it to go to many different recipients, you can do that as well at different intervals. So maybe my managers want to get this once a month, but I want to get this every day. So I'm going to set this to run a daily report for the last 24 hours as a PDF and set schedule. And that's literally all I have to do to create and automate that report. If there's other data that I want to include in that report, I can now add it as additional pages to that report. And it'll put a nice cover sheet and a table of contents on it and send those reports out automatically. So we've tried to make it easy enough to create and manage those reports that there's no excuse for them not getting done. It doesn't require any special training or SQL or scripting knowledge to be able to do that. And then you can actually replace reactive alarms with proactive reporting. Now, one of the other things is we need to think about how to manage and reliably communicate what's going on during an incident to all of the different teams and stakeholders. And this isn't a new requirement, but the current situation is really highlighting this for a lot of companies because we need to give some thought to exactly how we're going to get notifications to people. And minimizing the alert noise is obviously an important step like we just talked about. But especially considering that it's really easy to miss things in email and SMS is very interruptive, only the most urgent alerts should be sent that way. And if your email infrastructure is having issues, or if you're having a mass outage, it could be slow or saturated with alerts, or maybe your email is in-house, and if your corporate internet goes down, your remote workers can't get to your email anymore. So we want to use other types of notification as well. And we can use things like API integration into team communication platforms like Slack or Yammer or other things like that to make sure that all the members of the team are aware of what's being done, when, and by whom. This also can create a nice log of communications after the incident to make the postmortem easier and help with things like root cause analysis. If you're only using email for notifications, it can be really difficult to go back in and say, Bob got dropped off the CC for that last email, so now we have to go dig into somebody else's email to see the history. Some of these team communication platforms have really good history and search tools, and they make it really a useful additional feature there. You can also use mobile app push using our iOS or Android app to get notifications sent directly to your mobile device from the cloud. Let me show you what that looks like. So we make it very simple to leverage the mobile application. We developed a patented security architecture to make sure you can get access to the internal data from anywhere, even if your Netreo is deployed entirely on-premise. It just needs basic HTTPS access to the internet. And to use it, it's as easy as switching on the cloud services and live data functions. And then the mobile app will give you a full view into all the performance and incident data, including graphing. It supports mobile push notifications. And since those take a completely different path from email, and are initiated on the cloud side, the state of your internal networks and systems does not affect them. It can also notify you if for some reason your on-premise Netreo has lost connection, like your corporate internet has gone down. You can get notified by the cloud directly for that. If you're using our on-premise deployment option, it uses a heartbeat back and forth to perform that functionality. So it can tell when it's no longer hearing from your system for any reason, whether it's crashed or the system it's on is down or your virtualization cluster went down or the internet went down. Regardless of the reason it's not communicating, it'll automatically push out a notification to your mobile devices. Now, we also recommend centralizing the alerting if possible to minimize alarm noise. And this accomplishes a few things. So one of the main ones is it eliminates duplicate alerts and conflicting status coming from multiple tools, because those kinds of notifications can confuse engineers that are working on the problem or even lead them down the wrong paths. It also can create a problem where you have multiple teams running in parallel trying to fix the same problem. If an alarm comes in and the database tool thinks that the database is down, the storage tool says the storage is down, and the network tool says the network has got a problem, and the application tool says the application is offline, I might have 4 completely separate IT teams that are now all trying to troubleshoot, figure out what the root cause of the problem is. By centralizing the alerting, we can identify, which of the underlying problems is the root cause of the alarm and then route those alarms more correctly so that only the necessary and affected teams are really going to be working on it. It also provides a single point of acknowledgement and communication between those teams to help foster transparency between those organizations, and it eliminates information silos. So looking at the whole stack in one place really helps make sure that you're only pointing alarms to the teams that need them. Now, it's key that when we're monitoring our critical applications, whether they're hosted in your data center or in the cloud, you want to have those monitored. And we've made that easy to do by using what we call our web application response time or WebArt monitoring. So you can create synthetic checks to monitor your internal applications or cloud hosted SaaS applications like Office 365, Zoom, or Salesforce. And you can launch these checks from your Netreo appliance. So it could be your on-prem, or it could be launched from a network of cloud-hosted web reflectors that we maintain around the world. So you can launch those checks from various locations and make sure that the remote workers have access no matter where they're working from. No scripting is required for this. It's a very simple interactive wizard that steps you through the process of fetching the web page and validating you're getting the correct page content. And then it starts benchmarking the page for performance as well as sending alerts if something goes wrong or if the page performance becomes unacceptable. So I can even use anomaly detection to look for abnormal behavior for that time of day or that day of the week and send alarms based on that. Maybe my application normally does slow down a little bit at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning when everyone's logging in, but if that same level of slowdown happens at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, it might represent a problem I need to know about. And anomaly detection can find those problems without you having to tune and update thresholds all the time. We also can include those benchmarks in the remote work dashboard so that you can kind of see everything in one place. Now, for internally hosted applications, we also recommend using things like system or event logs to monitor them for health. And we take a slightly different approach to doing this than a lot of products in the space, in that we give you the ability to watch log data statistically. So what that really means is we can watch for things like an unusual volume of log messages. So rather than having to create keyword matches for every possible log message and problem, we can look at the total logs per minute. So even if I'm just looking at the total logs per minute the application server generates, it can tell me an awful lot about how that thing is going and whether or not that's a normal volume or something weird is going on. So even if I don't know exactly what those log messages are, if they suddenly jump from 100 per minute to 1,000 per minute, I can be reasonably sure something unusual is going on there. And our anomaly detection allows us to send those alerts when that's inappropriate behavior. So if that surge in log messages is normal at 8 a.m. on a Monday, I don't get that alert, but that same surge happening at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, that's unusual, and the system can notify me and I can investigate what's going on. You can also monitor systems down to the individual process CPU and memory utilization without installing agents. So you can get good forensic data about what might be slowing down the processes or competing with your Java runtime for memory, or just set it to alert you when a process suddenly uses an unusual amount of CPU or memory for that time of day or day of week. And all that functionality is built in, doesn't require any agents to be installed, doesn't require any extra licensing. So it's easy to implement even if you're not using it yet. Now, speaking of a remote work dashboard, there's a few things to consider including in that view to make sure that it's useful for us. So one of the things I want to do is use interface tagging. If I tag the important interfaces for remote access, this probably includes things like my internet links, but it should also include things like internal connections for your VPN concentrators or firewalls, maybe even some of your WAN links if they're likely to be impacted by the change in traffic patterns. You can even log tag server interfaces if that's where I'm seeing the increased load. And once those interfaces are tagged, it's really trivial to create a view for them on your dashboard. You can also include specific interface detail for key interfaces like your internet links, for example, or your VPN concentrators. You also probably want to include some overall status data like business workflows. So if you've already set up an application grouping for security or VPN devices, I can populate those directly on the dashboard as well. And beyond the infrastructure level, this can also include detail on key servers or application status and performance as well. And the whole system is designed to be very easy to customize so you can make it work exactly like you want. Let me quickly walk you through that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tag my interfaces for my key VPN ports. So I'm going to go in here to my administration menu and I'm going to edit my interface tags. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the devices that I want to change the tags on. And in this case, I'm just going to grab my infrastructure devices. And maybe what I want to do is I want to grab all of my routers that have serial ports. So I'm going to select all of those routers. And in the next step, it's going to ask me to filter those interfaces. So I'm going to filter that by the word serial. And it's going to give me a list of all of those ports. So now I can pick and choose which ones on this list I want to make sure get tagged. And I have all the standard select functionality. I can multi-select or drag to select. And when I pick the interfaces that I really want to make sure get tagged, I can go ahead and add my tag to it. And I'm going to put a tag in called remote work and add that to those interfaces. So when I apply those changes, it's going to go ahead and tag those interfaces. Now I can go in and run reports based on that tag. So if I want to go in and quickly get a view of how those are happening for those particular tags, I can go in and say, find everything tagged remote work and give me a bandwidth graph for it. And it'll generate that in just a few seconds. So let's change that to a slightly prettier format for a better time frame. And now I can automate this report just like I did before. So I can add this into my bandwidth report if I want to, or my server CPU, or whatever the different reports that I created. I can add that or create a new report starting from this view. But I can also add that into my dashboards. So if I go in here and I edit my custom dashboards, we can edit an existing dashboard, or I can create an entirely new one. So I'm going to create a new dashboard here specific to remote work. I'm going to add that dashboard in, and we can assign dashboards to users, but you can also assign dashboards to category sites or even to applications. So you can get a custom view for those particular organizations as users click on them if you want to. So I'm going to go in here and edit my remote work dashboard. I'm going to select a layout for that. And once I select a layout, I can just start dragging the different widgets onto that so I can get the exact report that I want. So I'm going to create a bandwidth utilization graph there. I'm going to put in a histogram widget so I can get a graph for a specific interface. And maybe I also want to put in a view for some of my business workflows. So let's put that on there as well. And then I'm also going to go in and say, let's see, let's maybe put in one for my web application performance as well. So let's put that on there as well. Right. So once I've got it kind of with all the different modules that I want, I can save that, and then I can set the options for the individual ones. So I can go in here and say this particular widget, I want to get a widget on a particular device. So I'm going to grab one of my key routers here, and I'm going to grab one of his interfaces and graph that directly onto. So let's say I'm going to look for his interface, Ethernet 00, save, put that on the dashboard. For my business workflows, I've got the option to actually view this as thermometers or rainbows, depending on how you want it to look. And I can either select specific groups to show up here, or I can just show all. In this case, I'm going to select specific groups because what I want to really do here is I want to include my VPN and my security devices. So let's see, I'm going to put in VPN. I'm also going to put in my security, and then I also want to put in my infrastructure devices. Save that. And then for bandwidth utilization, essentially I can go in here and pick that tag that I just created and say, I just want to put in a basic label for all of those so I can keep an eye on them. And once I've got this looking the way I want it to, I can actually preview this dashboard to see what it's going to look like for this particular view, and then make whatever changes I need. So if I say, okay, this is a little bit cluttered, I want to put that in the wider column maybe, or I want to include some different information on this dashboard. Maybe I want to include some net flow data or some other interface data. I can very easily do that, and then I can even turn on in the custom dashboard page whether or not that page is going to show up in my quick view menu, or whether I have to go to it by using the dashboards menu. So you've got a lot of flexibility to be able to very quickly and easily create those dashboards, customize them to exactly what you want, and then you can even assign them to users as their default. So when they log into the tool, that's the view that they'll get directly in the interface. So with a large part of our installed base in healthcare, we're very grateful for the many of you who are on the front lines of COVID-19 care, hospitals, emergency services, medical device manufacturers, imaging services. And so in order to cope with the pandemic, many of you have been taking extraordinary measures. There's been a huge surge in demand for medical services in many areas, and some of our hospital clients are converting hotels or establishing mobile clinics. So as a contribution to your frontline efforts, we're making our product and the services required to implement it available at no cost to any frontline healthcare organization of any size to assist with getting IT visibility that you need to extend your mission critical infrastructure and monitor those temporary locations. Existing customers, regardless of industry, can also get temporary surge licenses to accommodate their management needs. So if you've had to add a bunch of new, VDI infrastructure or desktops or remote laptop monitoring or VPN, whatever it is, we also extend that offer to them to extend their licensing and provide free services and best practice guidance to help implement them. So if you need any help, please reach out to us for more information at info@netreo.com or respond to the poll at the end of this webinar. Now, for those of you who haven't worked with us before, I'm going to take just a second to tell you about us. We've been around for 20 years with a proven track record in both public and private enterprise with a customer retention rate of 98%. We've won a number of key industry awards, including the Monitoring Product of the Year Award from Network Computing UK 4 years running, and we're currently a finalist to make that 5. We've also won awards for ease of use and customer support, and we made the Inc. list of fastest growing companies for the last 3 consecutive years. So now I'm going to start a poll, and you can use that to let us know you'd like us to get in touch with you. And if any of you have any questions, please go ahead and enter them into the GoToWebinar interface if you haven't done that already. And you can always feel free to reach out to us via email at info@netreo.com, and we're more than happy to get in touch with you privately. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions today. Hopefully that means we answered your questions through the presentation and not that everybody fell asleep. But thank you for joining us today. I hope you've learned some useful things to help you manage your way through this historical event. And as always, if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at info@netreo.com, and we'll be sure to get back to you right away. Thank you very much for joining us, Duleep. I really appreciate your time today and sharing your experience with everyone. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. And yeah, stay safe, be healthy.